afternoon, Patriot Nation. Today is June the 26th. In the last year and a half, the commie Joe Biden regime has given ISIS and other terrorist groups over $80 billion in American military weapons, and they have given Ukraine over $50 billion in weapons. Many of these weapons will take years to replenish, and Ukraine is not any closer today to stopping the Russians than they were at the start. So, where exactly does that leave the U.S. and our ability to defend ourselves? Well, let's take a look at some of the latest information and we'll make a decision for ourselves, since most likely we are not going to get an accurate representation of that from any of the communist propaganda outlets. So, first up, we have an article here from Al Jazeera. What weapons has Ukraine received? The military sent aid to Ukraine that includes conventional weapons as well as more advanced equipment and weaponry. Below is a look at the weaponry pledged by some countries, some of which have been delivered and some of which have yet to been sent. It is not an exhaustive list, and some nations kept their transfer secret. I wonder why. The weapons include artillery, anti-aircraft weapons, anti-tank weapons, armored vehicles, reconnaissance and attack drones, helicopters, small arms, ammunition, and body armor. Um, Under the artillery, the U.S. has pledged 114 or M114 155 millimeter howitzers, which are long-range artillery. Anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons, shoulder-fired, man-pad, NLAW, harpoon, anti-ship missiles, Stinger missiles, Javelin anti-tank missiles, Milan anti-tank guided missiles, and Cheetah anti-aircraft missiles are among the weapons that have been pledged. Let's see. It looks like armored vehicle-wise, they're not listing anything from the U.S. on there, although I'm pretty sure that that they're giving some armored vehicles in that as well. Reconnaissance, we've got U.S.-made Phoenix Ghost tactical drones and Puma unmanned aerial systems are among the drones pledged to Ukraine by the U.S. The U.S. and Czech Republic have sent Ukraine Mi-24 attack helicopters. A number of countries are sending automatic rifles, machine guns, assault rifles. Seriously, they've even got to put assault rifles in this. Machine guns and automatic rifles, they're all kind of the same thing. Sniper rifles, submachine guns, pistols, and ammunition. The UK is giving multiple launch rocket systems, armored vehicle, small arms, kind of just a visual listing of everything there. The U.S. has committed $54 billion initially, plus more. We're over probably 60 now, including more than $20 billion in military support approved by Congress, as well as a number of aid packages. The DoD package includes high mobility artillery rocket systems, 5 counter artillery radars, 2 air surveillance radars, 1,000 javelins, and 50 command launch units, 6,000 anti-armor weapons, 15,000 howitzer 155 millimeter artillery rounds, 4 Mi-17 helicopters, 15 tactical vehicles, spare parts, and equipment. The U.S. has committed to Ukraine so far 700 Switchblade tactical unmanned aerial systems, 121 Phoenix Ghost unmanned aerial systems, Puma unmanned aerial systems, 20 Mi-17 helicopters that has laser-guided rockets, unmanned coastal defense vehicles, M18A Claymore anti-personnel munitions, 7,000 small arms, 108 155 millimeter howitzers, 220,000 artillery rounds, and 90 tactical vehicles to tow the howitzers, 1,400 Stinger anti-aircraft systems, 6,500 Javelin anti-armor systems, 50 million rounds of small ammunition, plus HIMARS, 15 tactical vehicles to tow equipment, 100 plus armored high mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, Humvees, 200 M113 armored personnel carriers, 22 counter artillery radars, 4 counter mortar radars, 4 air surveillance radars, C4 explosives and demolition equipment for obstacle clearing. On June 1st, Commie Joe said it would provide Ukraine with HIMARS rockets under the condition that Ukrainian forces not use them to hit targets inside Russia. Here's some info on the HIMARS. It has a range of around 50 miles. It has a pod of six 227 millimeter guided missiles, or one pod loaded with a tactical missile. Spent pods can be removed, a new one loaded by a small crew within minutes. When you're sending, we lost a crap ton of weapons to ISIS and other terrorists, the Taliban, during the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. So taking another $50 billion worth of weapon systems out of our arsenal is a huge amount of resources that we have spent in the last year and a half for incidents where we're not even directly involved. So we look at defense news, another example, of more that's being sent. Includes Harpoon launchers, unspecified numbers of guided missile rocket systems, or I don't know how you pronounce the acronym, GEMLARS. Rockets previously committed, HIMARS. Lloyd Austin announced in Brussels also included M777 howitzers, 36,000 rounds of ammunition, and thousands of secure radios. Ukrainian force is facing a tough fight in eastern Ukraine. The U.S. has been sending arms meant to take out positions from which Russian forces launch brutal artillery barrages. When you're in the fight, you can never get enough, and you can never get it quick enough, Austin said at a press conference with Miley. But having said all that, we're going to work hard to make sure we're doing everything humanly possible. We're going to continue to move heaven and earth to get them the capability they need. The new U.S. aid uses a combination of $350 million in presidential authority to draw equipment from U.S. military stockpiles and $650 million in the separate Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. Defense official said the Pentagon plans to use ASAI to buy truck-mounted Harpoon launchers, which the U.S. doesn't operate, but the missiles themselves would come from allies and partners. Denmark previously committed to providing Harpoon weapons to Ukraine. And there are reports now that even some of the NATO allies are starting to run out of their weapon supplies. And to me, this is very concerning because Ukraine isn't any closer today to securing their country than they were on day one. All that has happened is that we have sent a crap ton of United States and NATO equipment and ammunition and weapons into Ukraine, and it has all been lost or destroyed or sold on the black market. There are numerous reports that, all of these weapons, or not, maybe not all, but a large number of the weapons that we're sending over there are not actually going to the front lines and to the soldiers. They're being sold on the black market. So this stuff's not even it's not even being used for the purpose it was intended, which shouldn't surprise anyone, because anyone that's been following anything with Ukraine over the last decade knows exactly how corrupt the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian system is. And so it's baffling to me that we are continuing to send all of our inventory over to them. And the part that's going to be the scariest to me is that we're not even engaged in this yet. But we're sending all of our equipment, we're sending all of our resources over there for those guys to use, destroy, or, just use up. Some of this stuff, this isn't, once you go through all of these javelins and all these stingers and all the actual, ammunition that these weapon systems uses, a lot of this stuff just isn't, blink of an eye and it's replenished. we had reports, last month that it's going to take years or decades to replace a lot of this stuff. I mean, we have weapon systems that we had a huge amount of stuff created. We haven't had any made sense. And so all of the components that these things need to be built are no longer available, which means that they're going to have to go through and either start making all these components to be able to make these weapon systems, or they're going to have to go through and completely redesign them to use other components that are available. And then we have all of the supply chain issues that are in place. And so a lot of these weapon systems have, electronic components in them and computer chips. And so because none of these components are available, it's going to take years to be able to get those components back into stock to be able to make the components that go into these weapon systems. And so you're looking at like decades to replace the amount of stuff that we've given to Ukraine. There's, we have the issue of, what's taking place with China and Taiwan right now, which is beginning to escalate more and more and more. We've got all sorts of stuff going on down in the Middle East again, with Iran and Israel and Turkey and, some of these other little factions down and through there that are causing problems. I mean, we're sending troops down in there to try to do some more stuff against ISIS. You've got, Russians, going into Ecuador and Venezuela and Cuba along with the Chinese. So we've got concerns down there. And, we're seeing report after report after report that our weapon stockpiles are being depleted. And so this is from Daily Caller. American weapon stockpiles are being depleted as Commie Joe arms Ukraine. American weapon stockpiles are being depleted amongst Commie Joe Biden's push to ship more equipment to Ukraine. The House passed a nearly $40 billion bill, a significant increase compared to past packages intended to further help Ukraine with its fight with Russia. The bill alone includes over $20 billion in new weapons and security aid for Ukraine, and also marks an increase from the $33 billion initially proposed. We've blown through several years' worth of Javelin missiles in the Ukraine, 30% of our Stinger stockpile. These are missile systems that we are going to need going forward, particularly if we're going to try to help Taiwan defend itself from Chinese invasion of the island, told Fox, blah, blah, blah. Continued on to accuse the Pentagon of providing no plan on the process of buying certain equipment to replenish the stockpiles over time. Here we have, another article from the Washington Post. The Pentagon has a supply chain problem. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, no weapon has been more effective against Russian forces than the Javelin anti-tank missile, drawing on a supply of roughly 7,000 U.S.-made Javelins. Ukrainian fighters have destroyed at least 400 Russian tanks and hundreds more armored vehicles. The weapon's potency has helped foil President Vladimir Putin's plans to overrun the country. There's just one problem. The U.S. stockpile is now running out. Within months, the Pentagon will be unable to deliver new ones without emptying its own supply. The war has also consumed 1/4 of the U.S. inventory of Stinger shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. Raytheon, which makes the Stinger, said it could take up to a year to restart production. At the current usage, supplies would be nearly exhausted by next year. And that's assuming that, nothing goes hot with China and nothing goes hot in the Middle East or any place else where we need to start deploying this equipment to. That's just looking at sending this stuff to Ukraine for what's going on there, ladies and gentlemen. This is putting us in a very dangerous spot, in my opinion. The weakness of the Pentagon supply chain threatens not only aid to Ukraine, but also America's ability to respond to future crises, including a potential conflict over Taiwan, whose military depends on U.S.-made hardware. To address the current strain, Commie Joe should consider invoking the Defense Production Act, which requires manufacturers to prioritize delivering goods for defense-related needs over orders from other industries. Although sometimes misused for political purposes, baby Formula anyone, the authority could in this case help ease production bottlenecks for military vehicles and heavy weaponry. Another article from the New York Times, running low on ammo. The war is pushing inflation in the U.S. to a 4-decade high. Ukrainian military casualties are rising and are now between 100 and 200 soldiers each day. Global companies have lost more than $59 billion from their Russian operations. Russia cut interest rates to 9.5% in the latest measure to protect the economy from impact. Running low on ammo. With the Eastern Front settled, stockpiles have become so depleted that Ukrainian soldiers are conserving their shells and sometimes can't return fire. A gun that would have been firing consistently a few weeks ago is today firing much less, according to troops in the field. Instead of blanketing Russian positions with ordnance, soldiers are only engaging specific targets. Most of the big guns that Ukrainian forces have require Soviet-era ammunition. Ukraine had stockpiles of these and has received some from Central European countries, but these are now running low. I mean, even good old CNN, let's see if I can adjust this, just closet is bare, aid to Ukraine depletes U.S. weapons supply. So even good old Clinton News Network is, or should I say Communist News Network, is even reporting that the supplies are running low. And that puts America in a very dangerous spot, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a lot happening on a lot of different fronts. Like I and others have reported on or talked about, there is a lot of instability once again in the Middle East. You have, Iran going full speed with its efforts to get a nuclear weapon, thanks to good old Commie Joe removing all of the Trump sanctions on Iran. You've got all sorts of stuff happening with Syria and Israel, and it's very dangerous once again over in that part of the world. And then you have the situation between Taiwan and China. China has tried to now basically say that the waterway in between China and Taiwan is its territory. So that's going to open things up for even bigger chances of conflicts there. And none of this stuff is settling down anytime soon. And while Commie Joe is out, with his press conference falling off from his bike and slurring his speech and, ogling little 10-year-old girls, the rest of the world, especially those countries that hate us, are plotting their next move because they are being emboldened by this administration. They are being emboldened by the lack of actions by this guy, the fact that we are depleting our weapons stockpiles all to the Ukraine and the efforts that are taking place there. And the fact that now a lot of the NATO allies are also depleting their reserves, it opens up a potential for this to escalate in a very bad way, and for it to escalate throughout Europe and throughout the globe, because the world is going to know that we are getting close to being defenseless and that we do not have the weapons capabilities to fight a war in Europe, to fight a war in the Mideast, and to fight a war with China. We just don't. And, even if we have the manpower to put forces of sufficient strength in all of those areas, but the fact that we're giving out all of our weapons and ammo and have depleted all of those things, and it's going to take years or longer to replenish them, we don't have the support systems in place to be able to carry out those battles. And when all of our enemies know that we have depleted our weapons and our ammunition for those weapons, it is only going to embolden them even more. And that puts not only all of America's citizens, but also all of America's allies throughout this planet in a very dangerous spot. And I don't think that any of the communist propaganda outlets are talking enough about this. I don't think there's enough pressure on the Commie Joe regime concerning this issue that I think that there are way too many people that aren't aware of just what a dangerous spot we're being put in right now. I thank you all for your support. Please take a minute and hit that thumbs up button down there. Make sure that you are subscribed to my channels, especially my backup YouTube channel. I'm going to be posting on the backup channel due to the strikes on my primary channel until October. So make sure that you have the notifications selected on there so that you know when I upload these videos. And please make sure to take a minute and share this video out with anyone that you feel will enjoy or benefit from this information. For God and country, good night.